Hello, class. Aloha.
Aloha.
Well, hope you've had a wonderful day. Welcome to 9th grade social studies, everyone. So today, I have a special treat for you. We're going to be conducting what's called a textual analysis. And don't be afraid with that term. It's really actually very simple, very straightforward. But I'm going to need your help to make this a success, okay? So let's look, before we proceed, at today's objectives. Our objectives today is to understand the historical and cultural significance of the song. I'm sure you've all heard it. If you haven't, we'll talk about it. Amazing Grace. And then we're going to understand a little bit more about the living legacy of Amazing Grace. So keep that in mind. So I wanted to actually show you a short video that relates to us. At BYU Provo, but not us, we're better. But at BYU Provo, the a cappella women's group, Noteworthy, did a beautiful rendition of Amazing Grace. So we're going to watch that. But before we do, I want to ask the question, what in your mind is a textual analysis? This is a skill that we are going to practice and learn today.
You analyze things, textures.
Exactly, so analyze things, text. Exactly, you analyze the text. And in this instance, the text is the song. It's the actual song, the actual lyrics, also the music of Amazing Grace. And after analyzing the text, we're going to get into the layers. Because that's what history is about. History is about choices, and it's about layers, and it's about making connections, okay? So we're going to make connections today, but let's start off with listening very closely to this video. Please take notes and write down your impressions, your feelings, what really stands out to you, okay? And then we'll talk about it before moving into your group, okay? Wonderful.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
So, no. We'll get back once we break up into our groups. Before we do, what's your initial impression? What's your surface reading of this text? What did you notice from the video? What did you like?
I loved it.
You loved it. Why, Jasmine?
I liked the scenery.
Okay.
I liked, I don't know, the feelings that the video produced.
And that's a very important point. Texts, songs, they don't just exist on paper. They are connected with emotion. And songs especially are meant to be performed. They're history in action. What else? What other comment?
I like the red hair.
Red hair. Okay. So, well no, but going off that point, text, this particular version, it's sung, it's performed, it's written, it's felt by people. We're in a social studies class. That's what we do. We talk about people. We talk about people in the past. We talk about us right now, living in the present. And we also talk about those in the future. Us in the future, our posterity, the future society. So this text is wonderful. So just to clarify one more time what our objectives are today. We're going to conduct a textual analysis, very short one, but hopefully super riveting, looking at the historical, cultural, and because we are here at BYU Hawaii, a religious significance. We're going to be looking at this. And then we're going to look at a little bit about the living legacy of Amazing Grace. And to help all of you do this, because we have 10 minutes to do this, I have actually provided some commentary to go along with the actual lyrics itself. Before I do, I want to assign roles. Jasmine, I'm going to have you be our group leader, okay? This doesn't mean that she does all the talking, doesn't mean she gets all the answers, but she just leads. She points in the right direction, okay? Ulu, I'm going to have you be in charge of the lyrics. Okay? So I want you to initially start off with reading some of the lyrics. You don't have to read all of them. Read a couple stanzas. And then talk about the text, talk about the references. And then Gina, I want you to be in charge of a short biography about the author, John Newton. Right? So John Newton, just to give you a brief description, he was a slave trader. He sold African slaves as a living. But then he joined the Church of England and he had this kind of repentance moment where he saw the evils that he was doing and he felt inspired to write this song, Amazing Grace. So it has a lot of racial, it has a lot of religious context, but I'll have you talk about that and explore. And then I want Male to be in charge of an article, and I have a copy here for each of you about the current kind of living legacy. It's a personal account, it's not a scholarly article, but it's an account of a guy named Scott Calthorne who has experience, who feels that Amazing Grace is important. And then I'm going to have you, after your discussion, be the first one to start us off and kind of reporting your findings, okay? So remember, textual context or contexting a text, it's important. It's all about making choices, making analysis, all right? So you share your feelings, you share your impressions, you talk about it, you push each other, okay? And I'll be walking around giving some interjections, all right? So I want you to go to that table behind you. It's circular, so you all can see each other. And if I could have Jasmine, Jinam, and Nade pass out their paperwork for everyone, but I'd like you to start off with the lyrics and see where this goes.
I'm the leader?
Yes.
I have it.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm going to give you any questions regarding this assignment? And I'm going to give you 10 minutes to do this, okay? 8 to 10 minutes to do this textual analysis.
Who wants to read the song?
Okay.
Read it? Okay.
Whole song?
Maybe we can do the first stanza maybe?
Okay. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see.
So I wanted to read the first stanza so that we can, like maybe take it part by part, but also compare it with what Scott called.
I mean, he called himself a wretch, which means he did something
Right.
awful. Or he knows he's someone that's bad. So,
And once was lost, but now I'm found.
changed that.
Right. So yeah. So
So,
what our teacher said about like the repentance whenever he was lost, but now he's found. So that was like a change in
Change of
something.
life.
Yeah. Change of life. Change of. Yeah. Was blind, but now I see. So something has become clearer.
Yeah, because before he didn't see anything wrong with what he was doing, right?
Right.
And since he was saved, he says, now I see.
Just to interject, do we all know what grace is? The word grace, what that means in a religious context?
our religious context?
In any religion, just the word grace, what it means.
Like prayer?
No, grace, it means divine help. So, amazing grace, this is written in the Christian context, looking at, from an LDS perspective, what we would call the atonement. So, he recognized that without this divine help, this divine grace, he would remain a wretch forever.
I think that leads into the second one. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did the grace appear the hour I first believed. So first he feared grace, and then he was relieved because of grace. So maybe it was like, what I got from that is like, it's scary at first, because maybe he knew he was being bad. But then once he believed, he said, how precious did the grace appear, and so that's what relieved his fears. Cool. Does somebody want to read the third stanza?
Through many dangers, toils, and snares I have already come. 'Tis grace has brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead us home.
There's a hope that this thing's happening. It's more like that. This grace is helping us to go home. That we know there's a home that Heavenly Father has planned for us. And so all this grace and all this atonement that our Savior has done for us. Even though it's specifically to this composer or the person that wrote but in reality, bringing to us. Sometimes we feel that way, especially when we feel down with a lot of things in our life. But He's the only one that we know that we feel safe.
I like it. Should we read the fourth one?
The Lord has promised good to me. His word was hope secure. He will my shield and portion be, as long as life into. I think, sorry about emotional, but this lyrics is very touched. Heavenly Father promised to us, each and every one of us, because when we were on the other side, we were all obedient and do whatever He told us to do. And that's one of the promises that He given to us to come to this earth. And while we're here, there's always a promise that He given to us through those commandments that He given to us. And for us, that we need to endure, because life never easy.
Yeah, I like the words. He's promised good to me, and His word my hope secure. As if He knows like 100% that His word is like secure. And then it says He will my shield. So all this is about like protection and hope and the shield.
due to time constraints, could you move on to the actual biography?
Sure.
Yes. Don't need all this before.
Newton was born in London, July 21st, 1725, the son of a commander of a merchant ship which sailed from the Mediterranean. When John was 11, he went to sea with his father and made 6 voyages with him before the elder Newton retired. In 1744, John was impressed into service on a man-of-war, the HMS Harwich. Finding conditions on board intolerable, he deserted but was soon recaptured and publicly flogged and demoted from midshipman to common seaman. So that's his background, I guess. He was born a seaman, and his father was, I guess he had a rough childhood because his dad got like messed up, and because of that he got kind of like downgraded as well, and so later on in the second paragraph, very briefly, it says he became like servant of a slave trader, and so he was abused, and because of that, I don't know, that might have mentally affected him.
Maybe that's why where the song came from too.
Yeah.
Amazing Grace. I mean, that would save him from all those things he experienced as a child. I think the third one. Although he had had some early religious instruction from his mother, who had died when he was a child, he had long since given up any religious convictions. However, on a homeward voyage, while he was attempting to steer a ship through a violent storm, he experienced what was to refer later as great deliverance. He recorded in his journal that when all seemed lost and the ship would surely sink, he exclaimed, "Lord, have mercy upon us." Later in his cabin, he reflected on what he had seen and began to believe that God had addressed him through the storm and that grace had begun to work for him. So at first he gave up religious convictions, but then it's awesome that later, when all seemed to be lost, he knew that the Lord had mercy upon him. And grace began to work.
And to interject, if you see in the second paragraph that he became captain of his own ship, which was part of the slave trade. So he went from basically an atheist, someone who had given up on God, a slave trader. Remember, slavery at this time was generally accepted, it was legal, and here he was in the middle of this trade, but he goes through certain experiences, and as he ages, he becomes an abolitionist, someone who is against slavery, which is leading up to the third paper, which you should all go to, which talks about how this has been used in Christianity and also in the English and American kind of slavery movements to abolish slavery. Because social studies is about how we treat people, about how we see people, and the song is a really good example. So, Gina, I gave you this one, right? All right. Ooh.
Sorry?
No, sorry. It is not late. Could you read the first couple paragraphs, please?
So goes the beginning lyrics to one of the most beloved songs in Christendom, Amazing Grace. I'm sure when John Newton first penned this beautiful hymn, he had no idea just how inspirational and influential his song would become. It has ministered to countless souls throughout the centuries and the world to this present day. I think it's very true. So I was emotional when I read the lyrics. It's more like reminding to us, even though it's been ages, how many years he write down this.
So, yeah, that's it right here. It's simple melody with powerful lyrics. So that's why you're emotional, because they're powerful words.
All right, due to time constraints, let's all come back and. Alrighty, class. So I was listening in on your comments. I made a couple comments of my own, But let's have a short but riveting discussion. If you could start us off, what did the group discuss? What were kind of your findings?
So we were discussing about the song Amazing Grace. So it was written by Newton. So it was written by Newton, yeah. So we were talking about how the songs are reflection of his life as he grew up. So at first we read the song, but then we haven't read his background to know about himself. And when we read the background, he was a slavery and that, but then so that's why. But then he has a hope in God that I think that make him endure all his pain and that he's
Thank you. Very, very good. Jasmine, as team leader, kind of the thing that most impressed you about the comments you and your teammates made.
I like how we, instead of just looking at the text, because it's a textual analysis, we also looked at the background of the writer of the lyrics. We looked at the background of like the history, and putting that all together, you could see there's like more in depth of just the lyric of the song, and the lyrics itself are really powerful. I was saying, like reading those lyrics are like powerful. They like affect you, but it's more than just that. Like knowing the background of the writer, that he was captain of a slave ship, that he had like feelings of like no hope, and maybe he was abused by his father. Different things like that kind of adds to the meaning of the song.
Absolutely. Because to just go off of that point and what Loki has said, this is one man. This is one man, his life, and his song. But this song has reached millions of people. So it's interesting. In history, we look at people's lives, people's individual lives, but we also use them to look at humanity, to look at society in general. It's something amazing. It's called micro, so very tiny, an individual life perhaps, to macro, larger history. Any other comments?
I just liked how we're like, it was nice to look at his background, because then you can kind of see that like he's just a normal person as well. He had problems and went through things, trials, and like everyone does. And so reading that and then reading how he overcame that through his lyrics was like, yeah, like we all go through this and we all have experiences as well. So it's just like be able to apply it to yourself.
Exactly. So history in a large part has to do with empathy, which is creating understanding, being able to relate to those who are dead. You lived in the 18th century. It's been dead a really long time. You wrote the song in 1779. And it's 2016. Why in the world are we still talking about this guy and his song? Because it touches us, because we come to understand him. And by understanding those that came before us, we come to really understand ourselves and our society. Okay. So I want to show one more clip before we go. Oh, by the way, so we'll continue this conversation next class. You'll have a short paper. But this was a wonderful, wonderful start to kind of gain the skills necessary to kind of conduct a textual analysis. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes discussion. That's what history is about. It's about discussing, connecting with the text and connecting with your peers. So to close, I want to show a short little video that talks about the living legacy of Amazing Grace. Okay? And it's actually a trailer of the movie Amazing Grace, which came out in 2007. So they even made a movie about this. They also made a musical that just came out on Broadway last year, 2015. There's a book, a very famous book, written about the song itself. So let's watch this trailer, and it shows, to preface this quickly, about in England in the 18th century, actually, well, more early part of the 19th century, and how they used the song Amazing Grace to help abolish slavery throughout the British Empire, which was the largest empire in the entire world at that time.
I'm here to seek your advice.
That's Sean Newton. You know that.
Are you contemplating a life of solitude?
Yes.
People like you too much besides. Well, there, you have work to do.
But now I see.
No one of our age has ever taken power, which is why we're too young to realize that certain things are impossible. You're the best fighter in the house and the best speaker.
Is this little terrier Springfield?
It is a Yorkshire Terrier.
One man who risked everything.
Payment in kind. There's nothing you have I want, Your Grace. He fetch at least 25 guineas. The game is over.
To speak for those who could not.
They do this to let you know that you no longer belong to God, but to man.
To make the blind see.
We have no evidence that the Africans themselves have any objection to the trade.
And to lead a movement that would change the world.
Do it. Pull the dirty, filthy ships out of the water.
Slave trade has 300 MPs in its pocket.
It would be just you against them.
If we were to outlaw the trade tomorrow, it would bring financial disaster. The enemy is my enemy.
All the forces are ever right.
No matter how loud you shout, you will not drown out the voice of the people!
No.
You still have passion. That matters more.
In Africa, I was a prince. In many ways, not unlike you.
I'm going to try again.
As your Prime Minister, I urge caution.
And as my friend,
Not to hell with caution.
remember, God made men equal.
I once was blind, but now I see. Did I write that?
Yes, you did.
Now at last it's true.
Amazing grace.
And we have class ending, I know, but before it ends, to wrap this up, to really kind of experience history, to really dig your teeth into it, I want us to sing the first stanza of Amazing Grace. So, it's a song. Songs are meant to be sung. And while we sing just this first verse, let's think about the textual analysis that we did and recognize that in history there's so much more. This doesn't end. We could spend a year looking at the context of Amazing Grace and still not learn everything. That's why history, and this class, students, is important, okay? So I'll leave us out. So, have an extra card. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, here. Nodding. Okay. Wonderful. I'll give you back your copy.
No.
Just the first lyric, okay? So, 1, 2, 3. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.
Yay!